but it's fun. So I learned a lot. So a lot of people are going to listen to this on a replay. You know, this is the middle of the day for a lot of people. So why don't we get started since we're minutes in, and then I'm going to let you just have the floor, talk about whatever you want, and then I'm going to start quizzing you on some stuff. Okay?
Okay, you can quiz me on stuff. Because when you asked me, you were like, "Hey, do you want to speak?" And I'm like, "Sure." And then like I thought about it, I was like, "What the hell am I going to say?" I don't know, because I feel like I'm in the same wheelhouse as everyone.
Yep.
Like I'm still figuring out things. Like I think daily I'm learning something new. Every song that I'm doing, I'm like, "Oh crap, I can't believe I did that. I should remember not to do that for the next song."
Right.
The next song and the next song. So
I don't expect you to. I'm not looking at you as, this is about you just sharing what you're learning. Because I know that you have a lot of skill and a lot of talent, and you're seeing results in your life. And so we just want to hear about that.
Cool.
That might inspire us. That might teach us something new. And yeah, it's just fun. So this is just it's totally easy conversation. This isn't you need a lecture or anything put together. You know what I mean?
Would you do with this compressor? I don't know. I have a limiter on my limit right now. I don't know what to do.
Which frequency should you notch out? Go. No.
I think, for me, like, getting into the idea of production started out because I realized when I wanted to do sync and build music libraries, I wanted to do a vast quantity. And I realized if I wanted to do a vast quantity, I couldn't depend on other people, because people have other things, other projects that they're working on. So I'd probably send someone and then do the game of like, "Hey man, how's it going? Just wanted to check in." And maybe I'll get a response, maybe I won't. So it was that, okay, I need to understand production better. I need to understand recording techniques better than I currently do. Because I knew the basic stuff. I had GarageBand for the longest time in a band. Before we did our like recorded albums, we would always do a GarageBand version. And I would sit there, I would track the scratch guitars. I would, do vocal takes. I would map out some keyboard parts. And so I kind of knew my way around. There were other things like compressor and things of that nature, which I had no idea. So I was like, hands off. I'm just going to just track some guitars that when I go back and I look at them, it's funny because they were always maxed out to they were all up to the edge, and I could see them clipping like crazy. Terrible cuts, where I tried to retrack the next verse and I didn't fade it in properly. And you could just hear this odd break, and I'd be like, oh. But that was, for me, just learning, just trying to figure out how to do it. And then once I started to slowly I upgraded to Logic, and I was like, okay, I took a few courses. Having Kathy's class was awesome to understand writing better songs, because you can understand all these recording techniques. But if you're writing really bad songs, I feel like it still doesn't really matter. You can have the best production in the world, but a terrible song with no hook.
Turd is what
yeah, exactly. I worked with one guy, and he would always say that, and he would be like, "You're just polishing a turd, brother. Just polishing a turd." And I'd be like, "Thanks, Doug." He was great. He was like this. You could tell he did a lot of drugs in the 60s. And now he just had this very slow mentality, slow drawn, and be like, "Polishing a turd, brother." But I kind of got that. So I felt like good songwriting and good production went hand in hand, and I needed to get better at both. And the defining moment for me was when I decided, cool, I'm not going to be an artist. I'm not going to worry about performing songs. I'm not going to worry about playing shows. It's great. I enjoy it. It's awesome, but it's not supposed to be that's going to take away my focus, because that's a whole different wheelhouse. Trying to promote yourself and trying to hey guys, get everyone to the show. It's way easier to just kind of sit in my little nook and just write stuff, record it. Cool. That was a song. Go to the next one. Go to the next one. So, definitely collaborations help too. The more I've collaborated with people, I've looked to awesome mentors. You guys had Josh. I have to watch his video. Josh has been such a huge help to me. When I started the class, he was the first person to message out to be like, "Hey, you should start finishing songs." I would always post these half songs. And you'd be like, "Please finish the song." And I'd be like, "God, that's a great idea. I need to finish these songs." Right. And so we started doing that. And then he would just always send notes on "Hey, great job. I noticed here's some things you need to focus on. And it'd be like, oh, I wouldn't have heard that. So he was one dude starting out, and I think I bug him probably like multiple times a week with texts of just like, hey, quick question, quick. But then I make up for it by sending like a funny GIF pic to him to just make it up for like, but like to me, he is what I would consider like definitely like a mentor of one dude that's like helped me out so much.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key is like, yeah, you can always do things on your own, but always finding just those little key mentors along the way that you just kind of see that are doing good stuff. And you're like, can I just be your friend and sit around and watch you work for a little bit?
Yes. And that's what a lot of, I want this community to be exactly that. It's just being in the presence of people that might be a day further than you in the process.
Yeah.
And a lot of us don't have that experience. We don't get that. And when I get that, I'm the same way. I'm like, oh my gosh, tell me, I don't know, just tell me something.
It is. I go crazy mode. Like, I want to be your best friend. What can we do? Can we hang out this week? There's another guy here locally. I did this little, Julia, you were there, this little panel that was just like 3 guys for just talking about like sync writing, and the 2 were way more experienced than me. Like I felt so out of place just sitting there because the one guy won an Emmy for a soundtrack, and he was a super nice guy, Ame, and he has his own production, and he makes large sums of money. And this other guy, Rob, who works with marketers here in Pittsburgh, he does like music libraries, and he does all the vocals for all those voiceovers, and he puts together the videos. So he's dealing with like more of an East Coast market. I was just immediately like, I want to be your friend. And so Rob has been another guy that I've been doing instrumentals with, because Josh was another guy who suggested to me, you're doing sync, that's great, you need to get into instrumentals. And I was like, oh, you're right. And so I started doing instrumentals with Josh, and then Rob and I started to explain, hey, here's some of the things that I've been doing. He was like, that's intriguing. Would you be interested in doing some instrumentals together? And I was like, yes. And so a lot of the time has been that shared where I'll go to a studio and then we'll break down the things that I sent him. And then he'll be like, this was good, but you know what? Here's what I noticed about the part that you sent me. And you could do this differently. And I'm like, God, he's right. So it's like all these little, like each song's just a little check of like, oh, I should do this differently. I remember when I was doing an instrumental with Josh, we were doing these series of acoustic instrumentals, and the BPM was so low, it was like maybe between like 75. And I think at most we ever went to like maybe like 85. But I was doing these guitar parts where dynamically there are bits that were more like 1 E and a 2 E and a 3, but like the click was so slow. I was like, oh, I'm getting lost. And he was like, dude, all you gotta do is throw in like a little MIDI hi-hat and just like click out that 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E. And I was like, oh. So I just saved that in my template. So every time I load that up, it just adjusts to whatever BPM. I'm like, it makes things so much easier.
Yeah, and now you're not trying to interpret the swing of the song, because a lot of times there's a little bit of swing in that quarter note. I use a shaker to do the same thing sometimes. That's a great.
Oh, that's beautiful. And it, like another thing I learned was he was like, before you send this track to me, I want you to just throw a compressor on all your acoustics, because I want you to just listen for any like little tiny like little blips, any little things that you probably don't notice in the mix. And I was like, dude, you're right. Because like, I was like, why was I not thinking of these things? But now it's just like, I go to that instinctively, and I'm like, but I look back at old songs and I'm like, oh, that's where I remembered this. And I learned this little bit and this one and this bit.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
Give us a quick background on how did you become a musician? What were you a band guy? Were you a church person? Were you, how did you get to where you are?
So I was a little column A, column B. So it's like I grew up just doing music. Music was the thing that I did, because I was, as you can tell, I'm not like an athletic dude. Like, and actually for me, this is great. I saw the Mr. Rogers movie this weekend, which was just, if you haven't seen it, see it. When I was growing up, I would watch Mr. Rogers and he would play piano, and I was like, so I got to do piano. I did it. I loved it. And I'm so glad I stuck with piano. Piano is just it was just the best instrument for me to know. And then high school, I was like, I got to be in a punk band, because I was punky. Senior year was just, I got this electric guitar. played, and then I was like, cool, I got to be in bands. So for a good like chunk of my 20s, it was just being in bands, like writing songs, putting out albums, touring, and working the weird jobs. I worked at a car wash. I did like just these weird things to be like, I just want to be in a band. And then I got kind of tired of it simply because I was always for it and just super into it. And then people would leave and a new person would fill in. And it's easy sometimes to carry your weight, but carrying the motivation of other members and being like, come on guys, we got to keep on going. And then eventually you realize, oh, I don't think I can't do this. So it was like, I need a timeout and just rework my idea. Not say that music I'm giving up on, but I think I need to rework the formula somehow. The sort of like write an album, go tour is not working right now in the way I thought it would.
Sure.
But it was great because I met so many people and so many good friends that I've made. So that in itself felt good because I needed to get that out of my system to just like do it and be like, cool, like that was a thing. We did some cool things. But then I started teaching, and that to me was the pinnacle of like where I became a better musician. As soon as I started teaching, I realized like it made me get nervous because I didn't want to screw up when teaching someone. And like, they're asking me a difficult, like, how can you form this chord? And I'm just like I remember somebody was like, can you explain a diminished chord? And I was like, sure. But like, it was fantastic. Like it ended up, I got better at my instruments. I started just teaching guitar, but then he was like, hey, can you teach piano? And I was like, sure. And he was like, can you teach voice? I was like, sure. Can you teach ukulele? I was like, yeah, I probably can. And then I started incorporating songwriting into it. And it's been fantastic. So that's kind of been the slow journey. And when I teach, I like teaching people songs. So I like asking them, bring a list of songs you enjoy. We're just going to crank them out. We're going to go through them. If I see like theory or something I can explain the song, I will. Like, this is a minor pentatonic scale. Here's a great example of like chord structure, or get them familiar with the concept of like 1, 4, 5. And this is like maybe a 1, 6, 5, 4, something weird, like those type of patterns. But then I realized I was listening to all these new songs that I probably wouldn't have listened to that were all like top 40 songs. And so I'm listening to all these different chord voicings and like melodies, and it's slowly getting like in my head. So when we're starting to write, especially when I was like, oh, I need to write in a modern context that's not in a punk context, that's not in a pop punk context, I started to feel comfortable a little bit, because for 4 years I was just teaching like top 40 hits over and over and over.
That was probably such a great exercise for you and going into sync.
It was amazing. Like, it felt so good to be like, I remember when I started out, like when I started teaching, Gautier's song was like the top of the charts, and like Fun. That was like another one, or like Neon Trees, Everybody Talks. That was the hit. Wow. But like, as we were moving, I could see the progression of how guitars were starting to not be the main instrument, but they were starting to be a complementary instrument. They were starting to just like give more texture, more really cool melodies that were helping build the song, and not necessarily, as I was used to, like a sort of like Blink-182, like Fall Out Boy, just like in your face, where you're hit with this wall of guitars and you're like, damn, there's no dynamics in this song. Right now, we're just like riding high on just all of this. So like, I started to take in a lot of those moments of like, oh, the guitar cut out, but like, oh, there's still this cool pulsing synth that's happening. And that sounds like there's a couple synths like making up that one sound. So that later on, tons of work I had to do production wise, but like teaching helped really create more of a foundation that I kind of understood production wise when arranging how songs should look. Like, even if I was just looking in that wave file, I don't want it to be the solid, just like line through, but like I could point, oh, that's where we have like our bridge because it's starting to rise. Oh, I can tell where the chorus is because that chorus is just one massive wave right there that you're hit with.
Awesome.
But yeah, that's kind of my, and I did work at a church for a little bit, but that's the only reason I knew Ableton, because I would use Ableton for like launching tracks. So we would play with a metronome, and so I had in-ears, and that was good, but that helped me with Well, I mean, Christian top 40 is pop, and essentially, it's just like you just take out Jesus and you throw in Baby, and it's like, or it's just. I would always make that joke that was the difference to like a lot of like
Don't listen.
Christian. Yeah, it's simply that because there's a lot of Christian pop that's essentially like I'm like, oh, this could be like a Meghan Trainor song.
Yeah.
Like, and I think it kind of is because I know they're writing with that market in general because they've got to appeal to like youth and what are they listening to? Oh,
there's a lot of pop artists that have come out of the Christian world. I think Katy Perry started out as a Christian.
She was a Christian songwriter. And yes, I see Ezra. Yeah, I have seen the South Park episode. I think it was Faith Plus One is Cartman's band, Faith Plus One. That's so good. And I still occasionally write for some artists that are in the Christian market. Like I write a lot with Jerry Fee, and he markets more towards a Christian market, but he's done some other things that have been more like geared towards sync. So
okay,
yeah,
that's badass. So what I'm getting is that your primary instrument would be guitar, but you play other instruments as well. What would be your main? Where are you the most comfortable in instrumentation, voice, producing?
I'm very comfortable now. I would say like piano, guitar, and arranging. Ranging, okay. I definitely feel those are, and I don't mind voice. I feel pretty good at organizing harmonies and like layering, stacking vocals and like arranging melodies. When it comes to writing, I'm always going to be more of the melody guy. I lean towards that because to me, I'm like, I want a catchy hook.
Yeah.
Like, and if I don't hear that, I'm like, where are the hooks? There's got to be nothing but a series of hooks.
Yeah.
But I feel more definitely comfortable in the synth guitar wheelhouse of things. Like when I hear guitars, I want to hear cool voicings. I don't want to just hear, if you're doing pop, I don't want to hear chord, chord, chord. I want to hear like some sort of cool arpeggiated line that is maybe at a different higher voicing where you've got all these low boomy synths taking care of all that other space. If I'm doing something that's black keysy, I don't want a pretty guitar. I want something that's fuzzy and just is going to cut through, that sounds dirty, messy, but it just like kicks you in the face.
Their stuff sounds so messy.
Oh, it is. And it's great. It does. Like when I hear, if you just take away the distortion, it's just like bend, bring it back down, bend, bring it down.
Oh, interesting.
And it's really cool. But like a lot of it is in the tone. It just automatically, when you hear that tone, you think badass attitude.
We're talking about Black Keys. I don't know if you guys caught that, but that band gets a lot of syncs, and a lot of sync pitches are always referencing, we're looking for something that sounds like Black Keys.
And actually, Josh was the one that explained to me when I started kind of like a brand, because a lot of the things that I do, I write under different bands. So I don't necessarily jumble them into like one artist. Like I have kind of like my Black Keysy style band. And when we were doing drums, he broke down the idea of like, oh, you got to bust this to a side chain. And like, then you can like mess around because the Black Keys add a lot of distortion on their drums and they make it, that's how they get kind of like that raw kind of sound. And I was like, oh, that's how I learned that technique. Because there was a song that I just finished up like maybe like a month or two ago that he was like, before you send this off, make sure you do this. And I was like, oh, that makes sense.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. Josh has been so helpful to me too. Sometimes he gives me feedback that I'm like, oh man, you're right. And I want to hear that.
And that's the thing too. Like part of me, I'm always like, it's always the 50-50 where I want to hear that. I want to hear all the things that I got wrong. And I don't want, but then part of me does want to hear just like, that was good. Just like, but like, I'd say like 75% of the time, I want to hear what was bad because that's the only way that I'm just going to get to that next step. If I just constantly hear, I'm good.
Right.
It does mean nothing than just like a momentary high of like, ooh, I was good. But then that dies off quickly.
Yeah. So, okay. So let's get into your production goals and genres and sound and vibe. And where are you trying to get to? What are you transforming into?
So what I'm trying to transform into is I've been a very hesitant producer. So it's like I started not really wanting to do that at all. I wanted to be merely just like, just doing a little bit of guitar. Like I'll write the songs and then maybe I'll give some help on production and recording the parts, but I just don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And then suddenly I was like, you know what? I would get back mixes sometimes, or I'd get back things and I'd be like, I have an idea, or I think this could be done a little bit better. And then like immediately I start delving in, spending hours, just kind of like reworking the track, adding in things, sending it back and being like, hey, what about maybe this? And then suddenly, they'd be like, that's perfect, or that's a great addition to it. And I'm like, that gave me a little boost of like, well, maybe I should start doing that. So I'm moving towards that direction of producing and feeling comfortable that I can do it, gaining the confidence.
That is all of us in this class.
Yeah.
I think we all started that way. I started that process back in 01. So it's been a while. I think Ozzy started a while even before I did. But you start off, I wanted to just write songs. And I just wanted somebody else to save the production and take that from me. But nobody cares about your baby like you do. Nobody. Everybody else has a different idea, or they're trying to take your song and mold it into what they think it needs to be, which is how we all operate. But nobody cares about your baby like you do. And I think all of us gel with that exact message. Can you talk a little bit more about that, about resisting wanting to be a producer, but knowing that how helpful that is?
It is. It's just that tension where you don't want to. But I think the one thing that kicked in for me, especially that was just reiterated over and over in like the classes I've taken, Kathy's class, when I took a melody class with Clay Mills, awesome songwriter. It was always stressed about listening to your references, listening. And I would get these mixes back and I'd be like, but our reference that we're doing, I'm struggling to hear what you're producing back as that reference. I don't hear it. And so I felt like, I think I have a better control of like maybe producing that example and that reference and delving in and being like, I know you're producing one synth sound, but I think it's like maybe a couple. So let me see if I can just layer that in and kind of like give that to you as an example. So I think that was kind of my struggle of like, it was my baby, but also too, like, I felt like there was sometimes I was just getting back mixes that people just weren't listening to the reference track well enough or understanding it. They did one pass, and one pass doesn't really do anything. It's just like, it's like, did you listen to one pass, just the guitar, one pass, just the vocal, one pass, just what the bass was doing along with the kick? Did you watch those move, or did you just do a general like, oh, it's top 40? I think some people write it off too quickly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. They consider it like bubble gum and dispense. Yeah. And it's actually, some top 40 is some of the most amazingly produced stuff in the world. You look at the producers for Gaga or Bieber, or, I mean, some of these guys, Dr. Luke and Ryan Lewis and Max Martin. And I mean, these guys, they produce. When they're in the producing chair, it is a creative tapestry of things going on and moving together and controlling and automating. This is automating that and controlling that. Fortunately, we don't have to be at that level to have some success.
I would say that was the thing that was adding to the hesitancy. It was like hearing the things in my head was one thing of what needs to happen, but being able to communicate and produce that was different. That's where I felt super insecure and just like, I don't know, how can I produce the sound? And immediately my answer was like, I can't. I don't know how to. And then it was like, but I probably can learn from others and start just taking some classes to better understand and maybe hopefully move in that direction. Sure. So it's like, I'm far from there, but it's like, I'm slowly gaining some traction where with every song, there are little things that I'm kind of like, cool. I think I'm moving in a right direction, and I'm surrounded by people that are doing it better, that are giving me feedback and producing. They're just able to support me in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So.
Cool, man. Well, let's take some questions. Does anybody want to? I'm going to unmute you guys and let you say something.
Mikey, Fantastic. And so glad that you are here. Thanks a lot for doing this, man.
Thanks, Dan.
So I haven't actually officially met you. So how you doing, man? Hey, I wanted to find out. So it sounds like you started off as a musician, and then you became a producer that's having success in sync. Can you talk about like the first song that you got synced, or into like the first song that made you realize that you could do this because you were getting paid for it? And
yeah.
Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about that process.
Sure. So the first song, I'll be totally transparent. I've only had technically one song synced so far, and it was just for MTV Teen Mom. It was "I Will Be There," which I did with Josh and Ashley.
By the way, you're one ahead of me so far. That's fantastic.
Okay.
Nicely done.
So like, yeah, for the reference, when I started out, I assumed like I probably wouldn't even get a sync for like 3 or 4 years. I figured like I'll probably spend time building a catalog and that maybe I would get one. So the fact I even got one, I was like, oh, okay. The first song that made me kind of go like, okay, maybe I can do this. I was writing a song with my friend Anna. And this was maybe a year ago, and it was called Blank Page. And we wrote it on acoustic, but then we had this reference track that was Little Brutes. And I was listening to it, and I was like, okay. She gave just a basic kind of drum line of like, this is what I think the beat's gonna go. And then she gave little markers of like first chorus. And I was like, okay, so I have to fill this up with guitar, synth, other things. So I have to do that whole, and so all I did was just listen to that song over and over. And the first thing when I created the guitar tone and then I layered the part in, I doubled it and I think I tripled it. I listened back. I was like, I think that's a pretty close. I was slightly like, I think it's getting there. And I was super nervous. I mapped it all out. I sent it to her and I was like, either she's going to love it or I'll get back that nice email that's like, hey, thanks for taking care of this. I was wondering, insert everything. And she was just like, this was great. You know, you're great at tracking. You're great at producing. And it was like, I'd never heard anyone say that, because when you're in a band, it's just always a free for all with like parts and arranging. And I was in a band with 5 dudes. So when you put 5 dudes in a room, they're trying to like arrange a song. It's messy, too many hands in the kitchen. It's just like too many, whatever, cooks in the kitchen, as they say. And it's just like, it's too messy. So the fact that like, I was so nervous on like doing this. And then she came back and she was like, yeah, that was great. And then we did another song with her and we worked with this producer named Mark McCluskey, who's phenomenal. He's so good. I love Mark McCluskey. He's a super down to earth dude. And he was in town maybe in like November doing this live sound event for one of the bands that I knew. And I went up to him and I was super nervous and I was like, hi, I'm Mike. I sent you that song. And he was like, oh yeah. And I was like, can I ask you a few questions? When I sent you the files, was there anything, you know, that was drastically wrong or really bad? And he was like, no, dude, you're on the right track. And then he was like, if you ever have questions, just let me know. And I was like, okay, thank you. I want to be your friend. I want to be your friend. Like even now when he like likes a picture on Instagram, I'm just like, Mark McCluskey liked one of my songs, like one of my photos, just unrelated to anything that I do. Like I was at the park and he liked it. But to me, that was what I needed to slowly kind of boost me up just a little bit and not make me feel incredibly like cocky, but just enough to just go like, okay, maybe this isn't impossible. This is a possibility that I can do this, and it might take a while, but I think I can. And even as I'm saying that, I'm feeling hesitancy. I'm just like, I think I can.
You absolutely can. I love your humility and modesty, but you're a very talented man, and I've heard your work, and I think you have a great voice too. You're modest about that.
Thank you.
No, so much of, I think, the success in anything, but especially in producing, is just the ability to be open to new things, the ability to know that, hey, I don't know what I'm doing right now in this little whatever, but I'm going to go on the road of figuring that out. And it's going to suck for a while. I mean, we were talking about Jeff Godin earlier in the office hours for this class earlier today. And he talks a lot about, you got to get used to that idea of putting out a lot of crap, a lot, or mediocre work before you actually start getting good. And if you're not comfortable with that, you'll never do it. You'll never do that. You have to get comfortable and go, this is all I got. That's as best as I can do right now. I really want it to be good, but it probably isn't right now. Dang it. I'm going to keep going,
I absolutely feel that where I'm just like this. I've done the best I can, because now I'm always worried. Did I overkill this too much? Am I like, did I just oversaturate this? Did I just kill it? Or did I not add enough? I'm not sure, but I finished a song. It's done. It's a song. I'll move on to the next one, because I realized at the rate that people have catalogs, they're constantly cranking out songs. I need to get comfortable of being like, okay, this might be a good song, and it might not. And even if somebody goes like, oh, this isn't a good song, but for who knows, maybe like a couple years from now, somebody's like, oh, this is perfect for insert this.
Yeah.
I'll be like, oh, wow, I thought it was terrible, but it worked for this perfect scenario that I wasn't sure of. Yeah. So that was my thought.
Are you familiar with the pottery study? I think I read about it from Malcolm Gladwell. And the idea was that they had a class of students, and they divided the class in half. And half of the students were told, your objective is to make the best pot possible. And so they spent most of the semester working on a single pot or maybe a couple of pots and just trying to get it perfect like that. And the other half of the class was told, your objective is to make as many pots as possible. And so every day they were making a new pot. Not great, but they would just keep making pots. And at the end of the semester, then they put everybody's pots into a sort of a judging competition, and had outside judges come in and look at them. And so they didn't know who was who or what was what. And hands down, the kids that made as many pots as possible had the better work. And so it wasn't about perfecting one thing or two. It's cranking it out over and over and over again. And you learn from each tune or each pot, and you make a mistake and you remember that when you make your next one.
Oh my gosh, that's an amazing story. What is that called, that study?
I can't remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure I read about it in one of Malcolm Gladwell's pieces.
Oh, that's so cool. And it's true. It's absolutely true. It's just, that's really good. And I'd say instrumentals too was a good thing to really make me feel like, okay, I have to make these 2 minutes. I have to have an A section and a B section, and I want all of these to have the same feel, and I need to make 12 of these, and they've all got to be just like the same form. And then okay, and I'm going to give myself a week and a half to do all 10, or 12, whatever, and just like get comfortable. In the first couple, they do kind of suck. They're just not good. You can hear the clunkiness, and you can hear like you were working out like, oh, maybe this wasn't good. I shouldn't have done that. But like by 5 or 6, you're just like, okay, this is getting a little bit better. But then finally by like 10, 12, you're just like, damn, okay, like I've got this in a format. Like I tell, and I realize it's coming back around, I tell students all the time when they're like, I'm trying to play along with the song and I'm just not that good. And I was like, yeah, this is your first song that you're playing along with. You got to play along with at least 7 or 8 more until you kind of finally feel a little bit confident and feel like, yeah, I can do this. So it's like coming back around where I'm like, oh, that makes sense.
So can you talk to us a little bit about, because you're a guitarist,
yeah,
electric guitars is the one area, probably the biggest area for me, of sort of this big question mark. I have no idea what I'm doing when I put electric guitars in. And when I do need an electric guitar, I usually hire somebody and say, I'm going after this sort of this style, this vibe, this genre. and then I just have to trust whatever they do because I have no idea if it's good or not. No, I'm underplaying it. But when you go about putting an electric guitar, I don't even know what I'm asking. What is the world of electric guitars when it comes to producing that you've discovered?
For the things that I deal with, it depends on the genre. So if I'm approaching it from a Black Keys style,
Okay.
let's say when I listen to that, I think of certain guitars that I want to use, or then maybe certain pedals. Now, I live in an apartment, so I'm super comfortable with plugins. I know there's some people that are just like, they're very anti-plug-in for guitar. They want nothing but a cabinet, and it's got to be a real guitar. I'm like, the technology's advanced so much. Like, if you listen to Native Instruments Guitar Rig, it's fantastic. There's tons of stuff to choose from to compile the perfect guitar sound. So when I'm going for a guitar that's Black Keysy, and let's say I'm doing it in my own home, I will either do like something that's cool in Native Instruments Guitar Rig, or if you guys, I don't know what everyone uses, but I use Logic. And I will do a Brit Clean, a very Vox style plugin, and I usually use pedals.
Vox style.
So a Vox is an amp. So it's a Vox. It's kind of like it simulates kind of like a Vox AC30, and it's a great tube amp. I had a Vox AC30, very very clean sounding, like the Beatles used it. But it's one of those amps when you push it and you really turn up that volume, it can get a little gritty. It can get a little bit gainy. Just not overwhelming, but just enough. And I will use a pedal. I'm big on pedals. I use this one. I don't have it with me. My friend's using it. It's called, there's a great company. It's called JHS. It's called a Moonshine Overdrive pedal. And it's awesome. It's fuzzy. It's not super clean and clear. And I will use that maybe through, if I'm doing something Black Keysy, I have a Gibson 339 and a Fender Deluxe Telecaster. I will use either of those two guitars. And I will do like a rhythm pickup, which is like, it's not super bright. It's a little bit thicker. And I will just layer those guitars. So maybe I'll do like, and I'll make sure, again, that my gain is not too high, because when I started tracking guitars, I did not pay attention to any of that. I didn't think, and I'll always like check and test, do a test run and throw a compressor really quick to be like, oh no, is it going to clip or is this going to sound like crap? Okay, it sounds good. We're solid. And usually for something, if I was doing Black Keys, I'll track 2 rhythm guitars and I'll split them on either side, and I'll put them one left, one right. And then anything that I do solo-wise, I usually put down in the center. That's something Black Keysy, and usually those are straight up chords. Like those are like very like mushy, kind of like sometimes like power chords, bar chords. If I'm doing something that's indie pop, I'm going to stay away from chords and I'm going to look at different voicings. And so for those of you, if you don't do guitar and you're just like, the voicing would be, there's different ways that you can play. It's almost like for piano. If you do piano, think of them as inversions. I could play C one way and then I could play it another way and another way. Voicings are great ways for guitarists to get different textures, different layers, and different sounds out of their guitar. And usually indie pop, I will take that same plugin that I was saying, a Vox style kind of amp simulator, and I won't add any distortion. I will add a ton. I have these 2 pedals right here that I really, really like. One is called a Supermoon reverb pedal right there. And it's made by this company, Mr. Black. And they're very sarcastic. If you go onto their website and you look for like artist sponsorships, and they say, we'll gladly sponsor you. First, buy the product, and then you will receive the product. That is our official endorsement. And then the same company for the Moonshine Overdrive pedal. It's a little tiny one. It's called a boost pedal, a mini bomb boost. I like it because this mini bomb boost will add just a little bit of grit, but it still makes it, I guess the best way to describe it, a sparkly clean. I don't want something that's going to be muddied, and I want something for that indie pop. I'll layer several times. There have been times that a single part I've layered maybe 4 times, 2 on one side, 2 on one side, to really just like make it defined and break through. So that's what I'll do. Now acoustics, I don't know if you guys do a lot of acoustics. Sometimes I'll do acoustic and sometimes I won't. Depends on the genre. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. Have you ever used any virtual instruments for guitars? Any stringed virtual instruments?
I have not. I have not used anything for guitars because when I just thought of guitar, that never went to my mind. I was just like, oh, I could probably play that part,
Right.
and then just kind of like grab right into
Totally
it.
makes sense.
But here's the thing: there's technology has advanced that you can still do that, and it's going to sound kick ass. That's what I love about it. Like it's advanced so much in like I think of when I got like the beginning version of like GarageBand. And just compared to what we can do now, it's just like, damn, yeah.
I teach in this class, I teach a lot about using virtual instruments because I think it's extremely powerful when you learn to do it. So I'm a huge advocate of doing it. I don't ever advocate, though, that it's necessarily going to replace or be better than if you could hire somebody. It's just more convenient. I use it's a company called Ample Sound for all of my acoustic ukuleles and guitars, and I can send you some links if you're ever curious about that. But I find it way easier because I can just put in a pattern. I can draw out my guitar strumming pattern, and then change keys if I need to. So if I'm working on the song, it's like, crap, I put this in the wrong key, get the singer in there. I don't want to have to re-record a guitar part or try to retune it, using some kind of elastic tuning. I would just use my plug-in and change his key. So I find a lot of versatility in that. But if I were a really accomplished guitarist, I probably would never do that. Because
what you're describing, that makes me just want to like sell my guitars because that sounds way easier. Because I can't tell you how many times like I've been tracking guitar and then suddenly we change the key and I'm like, oh, damn it, I have to set up everything again. I have to go back and it's just like, and maybe it's been a week and when I changed it, I put new strings and it got like just went, I'm like, oh, I have to do that. I have to set up the mics again. It's just like, no, thank you. I don't want to do that.
I understand, but I bet you have really good guitar takes because you're a guitarist and you're going to know that instrument so much better than somebody like me that's not my primary instrument, trying to recreate that using a virtual instrument. Can you tell us a little bit about how you record guitars? Like what kind of?
Yeah. Specifically, sorry to interrupt because you were talking about, I was trying to chime in a few times.
Sorry, we didn't hear you.
No worries. So Mikey, the song that you did, the acoustic song for not the folky Americana song, "Not Alone," I think it's called.
Yeah.
You did some really great work on the guitar on that. The recording of that is just so clean, so crisp sounding. How did you do it? How'd you get that sound?
So that was done with my friend Jed. So we both play guitars because he's an amazing guitarist. Like he's a guy that guitar-wise I always look to of just like, again, hashtag dreamy-eyed look where I'm like, I just want to be friends with you. You're just so good. And he's one of my best friends. So the guitars that we used for that, I forget which mic. We were in Nashville when we recorded that. It was just kind of like on a whim. We were all in Nashville. I was doing writing. We were there visiting a friend, and we just decided we just need to record this now. And so we got a really nice condenser mic because our friend it was a weird connection. We had a friend that worked at Guitar Center who had a friend that had a really nice mic that was letting him borrow it. So we used it. I forget. It was an awesome condenser. And then we used one dynamic mic too. And he had this really nice Taylor guitar. And then so we immediately just picked that up. And I think for the rhythm tracks of that, we did the same thing. We did two kind of split. And he has this very nice, we did natural reverb, I think, in a lot that we added because the place in his house had these huge ceilings, like gigantic, like it was like awesome that you could just take that guitar and strum it. And it was just like, it just echoed out. And we were just like, this is amazing. So we did 2 takes in there. And then we moved to another room and did 2 takes in there. And I'm trying to remember, I think we did mandolin on that too. There should be some mandolin. I don't think banjo, but there was like tons of acoustic that we added and a little bit of electric. So as far as like compression or like any process, I think we did minimal at best. Like it was, I'm trying to think because that was, maybe we tracked that maybe a year ago or so. But I just remember when we were strumming in the room size actually is the thing that like made it. And like I tried to find back on Logic, like what was something that recreates that room sound that I really liked, because it was fantastic. But yeah, that was my loose explanation of trying to describe what we did.
It's like a friend of mine. I tried to ask him, like, hey man, how do you get such big drums? He's like, I don't know, it's just preset number 1, man. You're killing me, man.
I think for anything that I do, at least guitar wise, I try, especially acoustic guitars, I try to make them sound bright. That was the one thing that like my friend Jed and I both agreed. We wanted them to be very bright and upfront, because that was going to be more of the driving rhythmic. Like that was almost going to be like drum-like. We wanted you to hear kind of like those picks going against the strings, where it's like even if we weren't playing a chord, that was still driving like the song along with it, so that you could be like, oh, okay.
Very cool. So when you're recording at home, what is your go-tos?
So if I'm recording at home, if I'm doing acoustic, I have one acoustic guitar. I'll usually mic it twice. I'll use like an SM57, which is a great, like, I can't stress how amazing that mic is. It's the most simplest mic, but it's fantastic. And I'll usually mic that along the body of the guitar, like maybe right here, 8 inches away, like towards the body. And then I have this Vanguard mic that I got. Do I have it anywhere? Oh, it's right up here. Let me see if I can just like take it off.
Condenser?
Yeah, fantastic mic. That I worked with Sam on a song when I was in LA for one trip, and it's an awesome mic. The company, if you want to check out, Vanguard Audio, and it's a V13. Super nice mic, very, very nice. I'll usually mic that towards the 12th fret. And then same deal, it depends. Maybe I'll do like 6 inches away, like pretty, not too close to it, but not exactly like so far away, because my apartment is weird. It's not very echoey. Problem is it picks up a lot of things. That's the problem with like when you get nicer things and then you live in an apartment, you hear everyone's noise and you hear everyone. My neighbor has a cat. And one day I was tracking something, and as I was listening back to it, I was just like, I just heard this faint noise and I was like, what is that noise? I was like, is that a ping? And then so I isolate it and I really boost it. And if you just isolate, you hear like this note and like a, and I was just like, oh, damn it, this is terrible. So there's some limits to recording at home, but that's usually my go-to for acoustic. Of what I do, like as far as brands, I think I have a Fender acoustic, and I keep it. I think the big thing, regardless of guitars, make sure you just set it up. Make sure your guitars are set up. That's a very important thing.
What do you mean?
So a lot of the time, especially on guitars, like with weather, it changes. Like there's a lot of changes, like in your neck and your bridge pickups, like, or your bridge. The best way to show you, I don't know if you guys can see, I have to get this guitar set up. If you see kind of like the distance between like the action right on there. Yeah, exactly. So, and like sometimes I have one guitar that's set up a half step down. So it's not set in standard tuning, which would be for guitar like E, A, D, G, B, E. I have everything just down because sometimes I write a lot in E flat, and I noticed it was super important for me to have a guitar that was always set up in E flat, because you can get guitars to sometimes stay in a different tuning, but sometimes they'll fight it. And then you spend a lot of your time just trying to retune the guitar, try the part again, retune it, try it again, retune it. So if you notice you're writing if you're doing a lot of metal, or you're doing a lot of like drop D, kind of like chords where you take like your top 6 string, which is E, and you tune it down a lower step to like D. That's a whole step. Some guitars don't sound that great. Some actually sound terrible. So knowing what you're writing with and making sure that your guitars are set up. I have a Fender Telecaster Deluxe that I use a lot on like the indie pop stuff. The Gibson 339 I use a lot on kind of like Americana stuff.
Can you show us?
Yeah. So this is my like my Fender Deluxe And what I like about it, because I have a Fender that's not a deluxe, it's just a regular Tele. And the difference between that is in the pickup. The pickup sounds super thin. It's very like, best way to describe it, it's great for like Americana and just kind of very like, it's very bright, but this is great. It's very ballsy, this sort of guitar right here. So the humbuckers are very strong. So when I'm playing, it really cuts through. And the 339, I just bought this because I really wanted a 339. So when you buy guitars, you just buy them because you're like, I really want a guitar. But I actually got this as a deal on eBay, and it's always a guitar that I wanted. And I usually do this for like Americana kind of stuff or Black Keysy kind of stuff. So that's kind of my go-to for those.
Does that hollow body really make a difference in how it sounds?
Oh yeah, this guitar, I'd be lying. To me, I hear it, and maybe it's just me convincing that it was worth spending the money that I bought it. And I was like, oh yeah, I hear it. Don't you hear it? But for me, I can hear the difference, like especially when I'm playing those genres. If I threw that in probably like a punk genre, I'd be like, this is totally out of place, and this just doesn't fit right now, and it sounds terrible. What am I doing?
Sure.
Yeah, but that's like my rougher.
So when you're recording electric, you're going direct in, and you're going into some kind of preamp, or?
Yeah, so I have an Apollo Twin that I have, and so I'm going through there because I had other ones, but like if you guys haven't upgraded or you're thinking about upgrading, I'd say the Apollo Twin is fantastic for a home studio.
You just came out with the Arrow. Are you familiar with that?
No.
It's a little cheaper. It's smaller.
Yeah.
And, the same thing.
Oh, no, big difference. The Arrow only has one processor. The Apollo Twin has two.
Two.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, that's a big difference. I mean, so that's going to allow for you to have
multiple plugins.
Well, multiple plugins, more plugins for post processing, and then also when you're plugging in, because I think that the Arrow only has what? It has actually two inputs too, doesn't it? I think it's still. But
I'll have to go back and look. I thought, Ernest, did you buy one of the? Somebody was. I think maybe it was Tobias or Ernest was talking about buying one of these. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I just bought one 30 minutes ago.
Oh,
nice.
So, and your guy at Sweetwater was saying, yeah, this is really good for, what you're doing with home stuff. Yeah.
Oh, having a person at Sweetwater is always key. It's lovely when you can bundle stuff together. It's amazing when I have a friend that works there, and to just be like, hey, this, and this, and it'll be like, I'll get back to you, and you get a discount, and you're like, oh.
I know. Then you get followed up with a lot of emails. How's everything going?
The call when you're just like, why is Fort Wayne, Indiana calling me? And it's just like, hey, Mike, just calling to just see how you're doing. Just want to check in. And it's just like, it's a retail booty call. That's really what it is. They're just like, they just want to follow up.
It's a little weird, but once you know what they're doing, you're like, okay, I'm cool with that.
Yeah, you're fine with it. So that's usually what I'm going into when I'm doing direct. And again, I sometimes do Logic, and sometimes I'll do Native Instruments Guitar Rig. Now, if I'm not doing that, and I have a friend where I will usually track live guitar. Mm-hmm. So because I will go through, he has a great setup. Are there guitarists here? Some guitarists?
Sim is a guitarist. He can't talk right now. He's over in Amsterdam area.
Oh, nice.
And he it's really late there, so he's listening in. His wife's sleeping next to him, he said. So. But he does like more acoustic, where you kind of thump and play and do the kind of a full percussion while you're playing. He does that kind of thing.
Because sometimes what happens, if I track something here and we're like, the take is good, but we want to reamp it through a real amp, we'll take like the actual, I'll send the DI file of the file or the song that I tracked, all the guitar files, and then we'll go and then we'll choose the amp that we want to and just like reamp and then adjust the settings through there. There's a really nice, my friend has 3 amps. There's a Marshall JCM 800, which is a great, just solid amp. It's a very classic tone, classic drive. And then there's more of a slight pop punkier Mesa dual rectifier, which is really good for that sort of more bouncier, poppier stuff. And then he has a Fender Deluxe Twin reverb, and that is a great small amp. It's fantastic for the Black Keysy stuff that we do sometimes. Like I'm saying Keysy, I'm trying to make that like a thing. It's Black Keysy. But that's usually what I'll do for live tracking, or sometimes we'll just go there, we'll pick an amp and we'll mess around with sounds. And I could get lost in that for hours, just picking an amp and then messing around with tones and like, oh, we can make this brighter. But sometimes it's nice to not have the amp here and just use a plugin, because I feel like I mess around less, because I could spend hours just taking that tone. And actually sometimes an amp's a pain. Sometimes if you have a tube amp, the tubes go out. You turn it on, and I can't tell you how many times I played a show and they went out, and I'm just like, damn it, I'm going to have to go out. I'm going to have to buy new tubes, and I'm going to have to change it, where it's so much easier knowing that I'm going to go to a plugin. It's going to be the same. I don't have to buy tubes for it. It's easier to track, and then it's done.
Yeah, then you can.
Is it really the same? Is it really the same?
Oh, yeah. To me, like, I know there's some guys that will swear that they can tell the difference. And I think it's just like the way that, I bought that guitar and I swear I can tell the difference with the hollow body. I think it's when they're spending money, they're like, no, I can tell the difference in this amp. It's really good. It's really good. And I would say, yeah, but I think you can get just as good, if not sometimes better tones from a plugin. Things have progressed so much that if you're not using, especially for this sort of game where you're trying to crank out song after song, I can't buy that many amps to match like the things that I want to do. I wish I could, but here's a tool that's right in front of me that can produce so many good, solid sounds consistently and way easier.
Have you ever used Amplitude?
No, I have not used Amplitude.
Okay. I have.
I have. I don't like it compared to like the one that you're talking about inside of Contact, which
Oh, really?
Native Guitar Rig?
Instruments. Yeah, Guitar Rig is the shit, man. I love that. That's actually really, really good. I'm totally digging that one. And then what do you think, Mikey, about the ones from UA? So you have the ones in UA are especially because you can do them with unison, so you can actually go straight to DI with that.
I like the Marshall plugin that I've used before. Marshall plugin is solid. The way I used it was I accidentally clicked it and tried the trial version, and I was like, oh no, I didn't mean to do that. And then it was like, oh, I got it back, and I was like, these are really solid tones. And for the thing that I was talking about, the Marshall JCM 800, there's a great tone for that in the UAD like plugin, where I was like, this is fantastic. I'm all for Native Instruments. There's a lot, and yeah, Universal Audio has a ton of great plugins, and even some of the plugins Logic has, surprisingly, are very good. And I think if you can bounce them out with sometimes pedals, that kind of helps too, because sometimes I treat it just as a clean amp where I don't have any pedals attached to it, because some of the pedals I don't like. I don't like the chorus or the phaser. They're kind of cheesy and I'm just like, I can hear the buzz right over top of it as soon as I add it in. I'm like, oh, that sounds awful. But like, I have my pedal board of things that I like. I just need an amp.
I will sometimes actually take I will separate them out. So I'll actually do like my own compression or limiting on it. And then I'll take, use a what do you call it? I don't know all the terms for the pedals and stuff like that, but I'll use like a pedal first, like the raw, the raw distortion from UA is great for just getting that raw, like distorted type of signal. Then I'll compress that sometimes, and then from there I'll then add on an amp on top of that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, even like, the stock ones in Logic, sometimes I'll just add like the amp designer, and I'll just play around with something inside of there. And then I'll add like maybe one level more of distortion with like the Culture Vulture. Have you tried the Culture Vulture just yet?
No, I haven't.
Universal Audio has the Culture Vulture. I cannot say that freaking word. Culture Vulture. And it's just the freaking bomb. You got to try it. It's just like, I'm totally stoked on that one now. I was using the one from Sound Toys. Sound Toys, they have like the Capitator and a few others that are out there. I was using those sometimes for like a nice distorted effect. And then I found the Culture Vulture, where you can actually like, do different distortions on each side of the signal.
That's cool.
and it's really ridiculous. You get some big ass guitars with that sucker. It is
That's
just huge. So just thought I'd let you know that.
No, and that's awesome because yeah, you can get so many good tones from plugins right now that it's fantastic where you don't need all these amps. I mean, it'd be great. I'm not gonna lie, it'd be awesome if I had all these amps, but I think the technology that's out there, it's fantastic.
Hey guys, I'm so sorry. I've got to run again. This was awesome. Mike, I just wanted to tell you, man, you are just shit. I'm totally stoked about your success with your track. I really only had one more question, and I'm sorry to take up Ernest. I know
Go
that
for
you
it,
have
Oz.
questions too. But I wanted to ask you one more thing. When it comes to the song that you got selected, first of all, congratulations. That is so hot shit, man. How long has it taken you to get to this point? Like, you know, where you started, you know, maybe you started with Kathy. Did you get that through Kathy or was that through another group?
That was through another group. That was through the Talent House. The Talent
Okay.
House. Yeah.
Gotcha. And how long have you been trying to work on sync before you finally made it in sync?
I'd say like it's been a good 2 years that I decided that I really wanted to focus specifically on sync. It was where I started going, okay, I want to songwrite. And I was like, okay, well, what do I want to songwrite? I want to songwrite for other people. Okay, what does that mean? Well, I noticed there's always songs and commercials and TV, like who's doing this and how is this possible? And that's why I did some research, ran to Kathy. I took her first class and then connected with a whole bunch of people as I was in it. Just connecting with all of them. I did a massive amount of co-writes. I think I tried to do like 4 a week because I realized I had to figure out who I worked well with. That's why I did a lot, because then from there, I really whittled away to like, oh, here's like a good network of people that I've written with, that I work well with. This is the wheelhouse that I need to keep working with. And then I did the Access class and made a few trips to LA, a few to Nashville, started kind of going, and I've started to write more to like kind of in the country pop realm because it's essentially the same as like normal pop anyway. It's just you do it with a Southern draw and maybe add a cool guitar solo. I don't want to downplay it. I'd say the one difference between that and sync is like it's more story developing, definitely lyrically in that country sense, where it's kind of like with sync, you need to make sure you're fitting in your wheelhouse, keeping it broad, but still keeping it authentic. I think regardless, yeah. So like 2 years in general, I've been trying.
You're the man. I really appreciate it. I'm so sorry. I got to go pick up some kids. I don't even know if they're mine, but I got to go pick them up anyway. So good seeing you guys, man. Absolutely. I appreciate everything.
Catch you later, man.
Bye now.
Well, thanks so much, Mikey. This has been amazing, and you've gone overtime, so you're a trooper for going past the hour. I really appreciate it.
No, it was awesome. Thank you guys for having me, because I was like, I don't know what I'm going to talk about, but I'll just talk.
Dude, we'd love to have you back on there if you don't.
Can I ask you one quick question?
Yeah, Ernest, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. So I'm going to Kathy's event in July in Los Angeles. And I haven't planned it all out yet, but it seems like I probably should spend an extra day or two in Los Angeles, either before or after. Do you have any recommendations of where I should go or what I should do? Or
Absolutely. You should totally spend at least a day or two. Like, even if you reach out to someone in the class that lives there and you do like an in-person co-write, because I'd say the first time I went, when I met Zion and like everyone in the class, I did like probably just like 4 days. And I went there and I was like, oh no, I should be here. I should have done a week. And so I went back the following July to do a week of just nothing but co-writes. But reach out to people in the class that are from the area and see if there's, someone that you can write in person with, or maybe you're starting to send songs to a particular, publisher, or not publisher, but necessarily like a music supervisor. If there's anyone that you can reach out and get coffee with, even if it's just for like 15 minutes, it's just like try to reach out to as many people and plan that out now, because people's schedules fill up very quickly. And if it doesn't really happen a week before, but I would say just go out there and just the fact, have you been there before? No, this is great. You're going to love it. And then you're going to be like, that first couple of days, you'll be like, okay, you'll already be planning the next time you come back and the things that you're going to do a little bit differently. And like, oh, I'm going to do this and this and this. But like, yeah, reach out to someone in the class and see if you can just like write a song with them. Best advice.
It's awesome.
All right.
Dude, thank you so much. We will respect your time and let you go, and hit you up if we have any questions, if that's cool.
Yeah, you guys ask me anything. I will try to answer to the best of my ability, but I'm happy to answer anything you guys have.
What's so great is that we've never had, this is the first time we've had somebody that knows guitars that's talked to us. So this is really, it's really cool getting this perspective. And this is an area I don't have a lot to provide students with, because I mean, I outsource guitars every time I need them. So I want to learn a lot about what kind of guitars to do what with. So this is really good.
Yeah, I'm always happy. I like talking about guitars.
All right.
Awesome, guys.
Thanks a lot, man. We'll talk to you later.
All right, take it easy.